Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Web3 Founders Real Talk. Today, we're here with co-founder and CEO of Spice Finance to talk about his expertise and insights on Web3 entrepreneurship. Welcome, Dylan.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, excited to be here. Looking forward to this talk. And it's nice to meet
Thank
you,
you.
Blair.
Thank you for joining us today. So can you just briefly introduce yourself and your project?
Yeah, for sure. I think I can go into my background first and then I'll give like a brief overview of Spice. So yeah, I'm Dylan. I'm one of the co-founders of three for Spice Finance. My background is actually pretty non-traditional. So I come from a hard science background actually. So I studied chemical engineering at Cornell University with a focus in electrochemistry and battery research. So that was actually like the focus of my the majority of my professional life was in there. I was doing a lot of academic research, did some research at school there, also did some research at Harvard. And then I was also slated to go to UC Berkeley to get my PhD in chemical engineering with some government scholarship. But throughout that time, I actually always had a focus or a fascination in crypto on the side. It was just something that I developed through like my personal readings as well as like listening to podcasts in the space and then also playing around in the space when I had free time. And it was like the sort of thing where I had a hobby that kind of grew into something that I spent more and more time doing. So I ended up actually taking a couple gap years between the time that I graduated and the time that I was supposed to go to do my PhD. And during that time, like I really kind of dove deep to the point where it was something that I really wanted to do at a full-time capacity. I was going to get my PhD was like starting to become less and less appealing to me the more and more I dove into crypto. It was
Mm-hmm.
also like around that time that I kind of connected with the co-founders that I have right now. We're actually all friends from high school. So I guess it was more so of a reconnection. So they also like kind of helped me kind of get started and guided into the space. So I'd also kind of came into crypto during that gap year with a background in entrepreneurship as well. I'd actually worked for a battery company right out of college, a battery startup company that right out of college. So that was where I started to get exposed to like more of early stage like finance as well as like early stage operations as well. And that was really interesting to me too. So, you know, kind of combining that like entrepreneurship background, working in early stage products from an academic side, and then also like my side, I guess like hustle and interest in crypto, kind of led me to like entrepreneurship or founding in the crypto space. So that's kind of how I got here with my personal journey. We could kind of talk about how like we arrived on Spice, but I could give like a high overview of what the protocol is
Mm-hmm.
first. So yeah, so Spice, like the problem that we're fundamentally trying to solve at Spice is that lending against NFTs. So for I guess viewers who are not familiar with NFT backed lending, it's essentially a mechanism or like a DeFi mechanism, you could say, in crypto where you as an NFT holder can put up your NFT as collateral and take out money against that NFT, kind of similar to how you would if you were taking money out against your home for like a mortgage or something like that. And then you can yeah, so you could put up your NFT as collateral, you could take out money against it, and then you could use that money to do whatever you want, whether or not that's like buy more NFTs or execute a trade or something of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so as you can imagine, there's like two sides to that market. The first is the borrower side, so the people who hold the NFTs, and then the lender side, the people who are like funding the loans, who supply money to the borrowers. So when we started playing around in the space, we saw that there was a like deep problem on the lender side where if they were looking to like successfully fund these loans and successfully farm a bunch of yield in the space, it was like an incredibly complex problem for them to do so. And we
Mm-hmm.
found out that like the source of the complexity really comes from two areas. The first is um, like the space in and of itself is extremely fragmented. So there's like 30 different NFT lending marketplaces on ETH mainnet right now that are like either live or going to launch in the next couple of months. And each of these NFT lending marketplaces has different mechanisms involved in the lending process. So some are P2P, some are P2Pool, and then you're starting to see like hybrid solutions kind of coming up as well. And that's all to say that like if you're an individual lender and you want to earn yield across all of these platforms, you have to absorb not only like a vast amount of information, but
Yeah.
also like a diverse set of information, right? And then I think the second thing that makes it hard to lend against NFTs is that, as we all know, like NFTs are much more liquid than like your fungible cryptocurrencies, for example. And the lack of liquidity in NFTs makes the price action very volatile. As you can, if you play around in NFTs, you definitely know, or it's like
Yeah.
notoriously volatile in price, right? So that's also saying that it makes like there's additional risks that are added into analyzing the expected value of the loan. So if you're really looking to analyze the loan and make sure that you're safeguarding yourself from, taking on bad debt, it's actually like a fairly sophisticated process, and it also takes like a lot of your time. So those are like the two problems that we're really trying to solve. Spice, the way that Spice seeks to solve this is we want to build infrastructure such that like power users of Spice can spin up vaults, and these vaults essentially aggregate all the loans in the industry, so across all of the different marketplaces. It allows the vault allows the power user to set like predetermined, or like it allows the power users to set up I guess like initial parameters for the lending strategy that the vaults deploy. So you can imagine things like which NFT lending marketplaces you want exposure to, which NFT collections you want exposure to, and then let's say the value at risk that you want to incur as a proxy for like the level of yield that you're looking to see. And then from there, like the vault takes those initial parameters, it will spit out a specific lending strategy, or you could think of like a portfolio of loans that the user wants to deploy to. And then like any vaults in DeFi, it deploys the capital that the user kind of inputs into the vaults. And then on the other side, if you're just like a yield farmer looking to earn yield in the space, but you don't want to do all of the heavy lifting of becoming like a quote unquote strategist, you can come onto the platform, see which vaults have been spun up previously by other users, and then just contribute capital to where you want exposure. So that's kind of like the solution. And then the idea here is that Spice Finance wants to just be like a conduit for liquidity, right? So the idea is like you reduce the energy barrier on the lender side, input liquidity into the space. That would make the borrowing process for holders much more smooth. And then for the marketplace, we just want to be like another source of liquidity for them to settle loans. So I know that's pretty long-winded, but I think that goes through my background as well as like a high-level overview of what Spice is about.
Wow, that's super cool. Especially I love that story that you were like being really fixated on crypto and somehow you just landed in there. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely very impressive. And yeah, because I was actually gonna ask like why did you guys establish this project in the first place? But it seems like you probably answered my questions partially because you
Yeah.
identified the pain points and somehow you came up with a solution that may solve the problems. So I'm wondering, is there any, like the most heavy lifting or like either any challenge or resistance you encountered in your journey when you
Yeah.
start building up?
Yeah, I think like I can kind of talk about this on like a personal level, and then maybe I can give some insights into like Spice and like the journey that we've been in there.
Mhm.
So for me as like a Web3 entrepreneur, and especially in like the COO stage of like an early stage company, there's like,
Mhm.
and I guess also like especially in crypto, there's like a lot of context switching that you have to do. We're like a pretty small team. We actually only have 4 full-time employees, like including the 3 founders on the team. So in order as like the role of the COO, especially at the early stage, is like to plug inefficiencies within the team, right? So that requires me to kind of have a lot of like first times in terms of like
Mhm.
attempts to doing things. So
Mhm.
when I like when we first started on Spice, I was leading the charge on like the growth, the marketing, and the community building from the team. But as you could probably tell, like my background is nowhere near like what is required to be like a good marketer, I guess. Like I came from an engineering background, is way more technical than being, I guess, more so of like a
For sure.
social type of role, right? But that's all to say,
Mhm.
like I think I did pretty well. I think something that I do well is like picking up new skills and learning them quickly and becoming experts. So we were able to rally. I was able to develop some kind of like techniques to build the community from zero to like 25K followers in 3 months, built the Discord from
Wow.
zero to like 4K in 3 months. So that was pretty good. But that's all to say that like since then I've like actively switched my role on the team. So now I'm like kind of off the marketing in terms of like being the main person that's leading our community. We actually have one of our close friends, Shreddy, who's leading that effort now. And now I'm learning UX design from the bottom up. So that's something that's been like relatively challenging, but something that I think I thrive in terms of like picking up expertise is from the bottom up. I think the thing that's difficult for me that I'm like slowly getting better at over time is like switching quickly. You know what I mean? So switching context
Yeah.
from like growth to like UX design, for example, in like a timely manner. So that's something that like I guess is pretty unique in terms of like the challenges that I've dealt with in growing with Spice. And I think for the protocol level, something that's been uniquely challenging for us is that like we're an aggregator, right? So it's both a blessing and like kind of a curse that we have started in NFT finance at the time that we did, right? Because on one hand, the market is very nascent and it's very
Yeah.
fragmented, right? So the opportunity is pretty ripe and the value proposition for aggregation is pretty ripe,
Yeah.
but the total size of the market is actually not it's not that big, right? So in the sense, a lot of like the loans that are being settled, a lot of the volume that's being settled is being settled on the platform. And uh, for us, we are playing in a space where it's the current TAM is relatively small. So it is relatively difficult for us to penetrate into the current volume of the market, given that there's already players that have been existing
Mhm.
for the past like year and a half before us. And so like a unique challenge for us is like, how do we gain liquidity from the outside and pump it in, right? Because the value proposition is very clear. The yields in the space are relatively high as compared to those elsewhere on like mainnet.
Mhm.
So the challenge is like, how do we seek that yield? How do we get that? How do we get visibility to gain liquidity and gain TVL on our platform?
Wow. Well, I would say how to get things right is has been really challenging for most of entrepreneurs, and especially for your personal experience, I can totally get it. I can definitely relate it to that because it's been like steep learning curve for everyone, and somehow in the early stage startup, you have to be able to wear different hats, and you're probably gonna do like you said, you have technical background, you have engineering background, but you don't really have any marketing. But somehow you just have to learn it because you're
Yeah.
building everything from scratch. So that's really cool. And my next question would be, so since you have been, starting your project a little while, and what would you be your recipe to share with other entrepreneurs, like how to make the project like more sustainable, how to make your project hold up in the first place, and even like how to engage with community.
Yeah. I think the first thing that comes with that is like on the founder level, you want to make sure that like you're, in the product market founder fit kind of framework, you want to make sure that the founder market fit of that is like very strong, right? Because like
Mhm.
a lot of like the motivation that you gain to continue like fighting against the volatility or fighting against the different problems that come up in your entrepreneurship journey. Um, it's a lot easier to deal with that when it's like this is the space that you want to operate in. Entrepreneurship is the thing that you want to do, and it's like you would not want to be doing anything else, right? So like for us on the team, it's like we all live in crypto. We believe in the ethos of the space. We're very like philosophically aligned with what the space is like trying to bring into the world. And despite all of our different backgrounds, despite my background in chemical engineering, for example, we've all like kind of dropped what we were working on in order to dive into this space. So that's all to say, like I was saying, I don't think there's anywhere else we would rather be building, and then there's nothing else we would rather be doing than building. So in that sense, I think it's very easy to continue to gain motivation to solve whatever challenges kind of come our way. And then I think from the perspective of Spice and our company, something that we're very focused on in terms of the development of our core infrastructure and the core lending strategy is a focus on risk. So like sustainability is like our primary objective at the end of the day. Our value proposition is yield, but really it's like risk adjusted yield, right? Because we want to make sure that the depositors in these vaults are protected as much as possible, and we want to make sure that we're mitigating any like black swan events that may come up in like the NFT space. So from a focus on risk, we secondarily focus on yield, like I was kind of mentioning. And I think that this is like a recipe to make sure this kind of approach is how you ensure that you have like long-term survivability, because it's always nice to be able to advertise like a good APY, a 1,000,000% APY, but it's not something that can realistically be the mainstay going into the future. And then it's also like very fragile in kind of taking that approach, right? Because if you have one blow up, then your company is like pretty much screwed. You'll never gain trust in the space again. You'll never be able to restart, right? So you want to avoid those types of events as much as possible. So we make sure that when we're analyzing these loans, when we're developing these portfolios for the vaults, they are as risk mitigated as possible.
Got it. It seems like you guys are really dedicated to this niche to make sure just focus on one thing and just keep doing the things until it has been fully delivered to your audience. Well, okay, so the next question will be a little bit tricky because that's probably my go-to questions to every entrepreneur, because we've seen what has been happening in this industry from Luna Crush, FTX collapse, and also USDCT path. There are always some uncertainties, I would say, and that's something probably out of my league, like out of our league, and how to really, how to always, because as entrepreneurs, we have to make sure that our project will be fine under any kind of dynamic environments. So how to seek breakthroughs, or what would be your strategic movement when facing such a dynamic environment?
Yeah. I actually think that I kind of like the way that I think about this is kind of like flipped on its head. I think that it's exactly like the volatility of the market environment, like the nascency of the industry, and like the dynamicism of the environment that really like makes it very prone to breakthroughs, right? So if there's any industry I think that exists out there, if you compare like crypto to like to Web2 to like to SaaS companies, traditional SaaS companies, to like TradFi, crypto is the space where breakthroughs are most prone to happen, like specifically because of the volatility, right? Like alpha is generated more so in Web3 than anywhere else because there's so much going on in terms of like the price actions of these cryptocurrencies, as well as like NFTs. There's like new innovations always happening. There's new problems that are always popping up. And then not only that, but it's like the newest industry that exists in the space, right? So there's frameworks that from Web2 that you can apply to Web3, from TradFi that you can apply to Web3. So there's always a breakthrough around the corner in that sense. So it's just a function of like being able to find it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, that's not to say that it's easy to find breakthroughs in crypto, but I think that they're more widely available in crypto than any other industry, just because like, there's less players, there's less infrastructure, there's less competition in Web3 objectively, I think, when you compare it to Web2 or TradFi. But I think that in terms of like in terms of like the way that you framed your question in terms of like these different disasters that kind of happen in crypto, I think
Mm-hmm.
that the main framework that I kind of view it, although it's like it's kind of I don't want to say ruthless, but I think this is like a kind of a reality check, is that like the short-term volatility in crypto, I think breeds long-term stability. So whenever you try to so like the blowups in FTX and the blowups in Luna, et cetera, that have happened over the years kind of set up the new paradigm for the next bull run. The next bull run learns from the lessons of the previous bull run, or the previous bull run and subsequent crash. And the technology becomes more robust, the players become better. That's all to say that they'll be perfect, but I think that lessons are learned along the way, right? A lot of like economics, a lot of life is very cyclical in that respect. So I think that in terms of like the innovation cycle, I think it's like inevitable that these things will tend to happen. And after crises are born new paradigms, new opportunities, new breakthroughs that can kind of happen, right? So in some sense, it like hurts in the short term, right? Like everybody's hurting.
Yeah.
The markets kind of suck right now, but that's
Yeah.
really the time when new innovation is kind of bred, right? The companies that are building now are much more robust than they are building into the bull market, and are much more likely to, actually provide real value, because the ones that don't just like inevitably fail in these like turbulent market condition and times. But like, to answer your question, like how do you like position yourself to breakthroughs? I think it's like the framework of becoming like one of the players that you're looking to target. So like I think first you really want to immerse yourself in whatever vertical or industry that you're interested in serving. So you just want to become like a player amongst others, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
operate in an industry of two different sides, right? Lenders and borrowers. And we wanted to serve lenders, and we like before we started building Spice, we became like lenders ourselves, right? So we started lending against loans and started understanding like the process, the pain points in the space, what works, what doesn't work, and then also like making connections, right? So we started getting connected to other lenders, talking to them, getting a sense for like their problems as well. And then the key is like you need to focus on these problems, right? So ignoring like kind of ignoring the desire to find a break point at the end of the day, or a breakthrough at the end of the day. You really just need to solve a problem that exists in this space, or else you don't really have a value proposition, no matter how good your like product is, right? So you talk to the players about those problems, and then oftentimes like the breakthrough is emergent, right? So oftentimes the problems from the players that you're talking to, when you talk to them, the solution to those problems kind of emerges. And that's really how like kind of Spice was formed. We never really like pushed a product down any like lenders' throats. It was more so talking to them about their problems, and then asking them like, okay, you have this deep pain point. How would you try to solve this, right? And then oftentimes you kind of see a single solution kind of arise from all of the interviews, and then also like your own experiences. And then it remains to be seen whether or not that's a breakthrough. But I think that at the end of the day, that's how all like quote unquote breakthroughs kind of start, right? Just like an individual problem and a solution that's like emergent from the players in the industry.
Yeah, I'm totally siding with you on this. Because I would thinking probably we'll see, well, finger crossed, hope it's not happening, but we're probably gonna see more bleeding and more pains in the near future. But it's actually helped us to reshape the whole industry and somehow mature the industry in more, like people probably would have more proper risk management skills and probably would have more proper work ethic. And that would definitely help us to, keep this industry longer and longer and also keep everything more advanced. Yeah. So, and also you talk about like Spice Finance is determined to really simplify the NFT lending process by aggregating all like loans, pools, and but we actually know that the Spice Finance also launched the NFT appraisal tools, right? And I think that's the most substantial pain points in the NFT industry. So, what what is your unique differentiator compared to other NFT appraisal tools? And also how does like Spice Finance plan to be recognized by community to, adopt your appraisal tools in this case?
Yeah, so I think this is like perhaps could be a point of misconception.
Mhm.
And the NFT appraisal is like a core part of our tech stack, right? Because you could think of the NFT pricing data kind of feeding into our risk analysis system.
Mhm.
So like I guess like NFT pricing data gets transformed into like NFT price volatility data, which gets fed into like our risk management system, and then our risk management system kind of creates the portfolio of loans that the vault lends to. But the NFT appraisal system that we've developed isn't something that is a core piece of, or like, it's not something that we've built in-house, but more so we rely on other industry players. So in the same way that we're aggregating loans, we're also actually aggregating other NFT
Oh.
appraisal systems. So I think that other players like Caviar kind of do this as well, where it's like
Mhm.
you just take the NFT pricing data from like Upshot, NFT Bank,
Mhm.
Spiciest, and the Nabu. And then the way that we do it, I don't know if this is the way that Caviar does it, but the way that we do it is essentially whenever we need to like rebalance the portfolio of loans that we have, we just analyze all of the NFTs that we're interested in looking at with all of these different AI models that these NFT appraisal tools use, and then we essentially just take the lowest the model with the lowest error rate, and then we use that to appraise whatever NFT that we want to look at, right? So um, it is not a it's not a crazy innovation in the sense that like I guess like any player can really do what we're doing, but with NFT appraisal. But what it does is it allows us to guarantee that we have the best appraisal in the system, or the most accurate appraisal that's available in the industry, right? Because we essentially just take all the players and then take the best one at any given moment in time. And that's really like what's important to us, right? We just want accurate pricing data to have the best like portfolio constructor that we can. So that's how we do NFT appraisal. Um, but in terms of like visibility, I think that the visibility kind of comes into like three main areas. The first is that, and we're glad to have our head of marketing, head of growth strategy on board to help with this. But there's like three main areas that we really do to increase visibility. The first is like we deploy a strategy where we partner with a bunch of NFT finance protocols. So as an aggregator, we kind of touch all corners of the industry. So something we like to do is like co-marketing announcements with um, NFT finance protocols. This happens a lot in DeFi, but we think that it happens less so in NFT finance, and it's something that the industry could benefit from overall. So this is something
Mhm.
that we seek to do. It's like it's like kind of like 2 + 2 = 5, right? Like the sum of the partnership together is more so than each of us can do individually. And then we also want to kind of replicate that into DeFi. So most of our like team comes from a DeFi background. We have some like Omis on our team, as well as some guys that worked previously at Jonestown. So our connections into DeFi are pretty deep. So we want to kind of extend that partnership kind of strategy into the DeFi protocols as well. And this is also advantageous for us because like honestly, our protocol is more so of a DeFi protocol than it is like an NFT protocol, right? So
Mhm.
like we offer yield, which is what a lot of DeFi people are seeking at the end of the day. So that's another strategy we deploy to increase visibility. And then the third is really just we are about to start a focus on like networking and building relationships with like institutional liquidity providers and market makers as well. Because I think
Mhm.
this is something that, will be especially good to bring liquidity into the space and grow it overall.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you guys have a really sophisticated go-to-market strategy on how to engage with more communities, how to earn more adoptions by those synergies between other protocols, by earning endorsement from other brand as well. Wow. And since you mentioned DeFi, you guys have the DeFi background. I want to ask, because we all aware of how crazy it was in DeFi summer. Do you think we're gonna have our own NFT summer? And do you think that this sector would be the main drivers for next bull run? Or are there any other insights you want to share?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that like the advent of an NFT finance summer is it's like assured, it's like inevitable. It's just a matter of time to for when like the industry and the market is ready to blow up. But I think that like this is a narrative amongst a couple others that it feels like there's no future where it doesn't blow up. I think the reason being is just that like if you think about it, like NFT finance. So if you like separate the use case of NFTs from like the technology. So what I mean by that is that like NFTs right now are really used for like arts and collectibles, right? But that's not like the NFT technology isn't just like representing arts and collectibles on chain. It's like really representing any unique asset, right? It's like a non-fungible token, which means that it can't be swapped for any other asset, right? And if you think about like traditional finance, like all of traditional finance is built on non-fungible assets, right? Like everything you use in everyday life, you assign value to is really like non-fungible. I mean, if you compare like another example is like if you compare the total value of like assets in the world versus like the M2 money supply as like a proxy for like the total market cap of the potential total market cap of NFTs versus like the total market cap of like cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and ETH. The total market cap of like all assets is vastly greater than the market cap of like the M2 money supply in the world, right? So there's a long ways to go in terms of like NFT adoption, NFT expansion, and then also like NFT finance on top of that, right? Which the point I'm trying to make is like NFT finance is really just like finance as we know it. So that's all to say that like it will have to develop, right? In order to unlock all of this liquidity and make really efficient digital markets. So I think that it's inevitable that it's going to happen. I think the drivers that kind of like make that future happen are I think like threefold, and like two are kind of aligned with each other. But I think the first is we need like DeFi liquidity to kind of move into NFTs as like a first step. And I think that this is already starting to happen. I think that tools like Blur is really Blur is really starting to attract like traditional crypto market maker liquidity as well as like trader liquidity into NFTs. Blur is causing a lot of controversy in the current state, but I think that it is really kind of like a step in an inevitable move of NFTs from just like collectible items into something that's like more liquid, and then you could start seeing something that's I think that this is like a catalyst for the move of NFTs becoming something more than just like a collectible item, something that people trade, something that becomes very liquid, things of that nature, right? Which I think is beneficial for the asset class as a whole. I think a part of that, and this is kind of like Blur's strategy as well, and then also our strategy is aggregation, because as of right now, NFTs are extremely illiquid. It's very complex. And this liquidity makes it very complex in order to like market make, trade, lend, borrow against NFTs. So I think that aggregators that simplify the space will be very key in terms of like pumping liquidity, making the space grow overall, kind of lubricating the gears in the space in order to set ourselves up for like a NFT finance summer. So this helps with like things like price discovery, it helps with volume, et cetera, right? And I think that the third step to all of this is the expansion of NFTs into other use cases, right? So it's really like, if you think about it, what I'm trying to say is that like the public perception of NFTs has to move away from just like PFPs, collectibles, one-of-one arts to anything else, right? So 3 areas that we're looking at that are of interest to us are like GameFi assets. So GameFi assets kind of fall into a category or a framework in our heads of like digitally emergent assets. So like PFPs are kind of digitally emergent asset, but GameFi we think is another area or vertical that can generate a bunch of digitally emergent assets. And then also like, for example, there's a vertical called financial NFTs. So we actually like launched our own financial NFTs. So these are just like NFTs that represent any kind of financial position in DeFi. You can think of like a receipt token for a vault, like our Prologue NFTs or the Uniswap V3 LP position NFTs. So we think that these will be extremely powerful. You could start thinking of like, start stock contracts going on chain and things of that nature, just as an example. And then like the third area is like real world assets on chain, right? This is really like the connection of real world liquidity um, into into crypto liquidity using like NFTs as like the medium, which I think is going to be another area that kind of blows up into the future. So I think that the combination of all these three things, I guess, like in my opinion, it really comes down to liquidity and just like how you tap into the different sources of liquidity, right? So for like the first, it's just like tapping into DeFi liquidity, which is like crypto liquidity right now. The second is like tapping into um, other like other crypto use case liquidity. So that's like GameFi. And then the third is like tapping into real world liquidity, which is like real world assets on chain. I think if these conduits are opened up, I think we will inevitably see a NFT finance summer. It's just a matter of like when that happens.
Wow. That's a lot of information to process. Thank you for being like super insightful, and it was really illuminating. And we can tell you guys have prepared really comprehensive strategy for all those pillars in this Web3 entrepreneurship journey. And also, wow, you guys have amazing knowledge on this, how to analyze the trend. And it's really good to know we're gonna have an NFT summer. Long story short, it's gonna be a fun
Yeah.
ride. And personally, I mean, even for Forming Ventures, we are being really, bullish on NFT, DeFi sectors. So looking forward to see more innovations on your projects. Thank you so much for your time, Dylan. And wow, it has been a really fun talk with you.